Now, for Ayn Rand, her view is that the science of goal-directed human action is ethics. That's the center of what ethics should be about. And that's part of what makes her ethics so distinct from other ethical theories.
Now, if Ayn Rand came up with a new philosophy that didn't exist in the rest of human history, wouldn't it be a little bit unfair from her or the objectivist movement to say, okay, but libertarians didn't go all the way through since von Mises came before? I mean, if we look at human history and the evolution of philosophy, either you stand in the shoulder of giants or you do something new, but you're constantly building upon something that came from before, right?
Right.
So what would Ayn Rand's critique be of the praxeology of Mises that came before her?
Yes. Well, I guess, it's hard to put yourself into the frame of mind of somebody who's an intellectual genius, which I think Ayn Rand was, and I think Ludwig von Mises was.
Yeah. On what are the things that Rand would criticize about, like, Mises not being, let's say, complete enough?
Right. Well, the praxeology would be one. So she would encompass whatever he was trying to do with praxeology. She would say that falls under ethics, under her ethics, her theory of ethics. And then there were a few other points that she picked at, like, the Austrians are known to have a subjective view of value. And I actually argue in my essay, I don't think it fully is. They call it subjective, but implicitly, I think, is very much in the vein of Ayn Rand's objective conception of value.
Okay. Like, for example, the paradox between diamonds and water.
Right.
Like, how come diamonds are so expensive when they are not vital to human life, whereas water is, but it all amounts in scarcity, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So so Adam Smith had that water diamond paradox, and he said he comes from an intrinsic value perspective. So for him, the value is in the object, apart from human beings valuing it for some purpose or some context. So he had the diamond water paradox. So, like, it seems like water should be more valuable than diamonds, but it's not. So, okay, so then where do we look for the value of it? So it's not, so the thing that's more useful is not more valuable. Water is more useful because we die without it. So he said, well, where does the value come from? Oh, it must come from the inputs, from the costs. So the labor theory of value, for example, that is the amount of labor that went in to produce it. And then the marginal revolution, which happened around the 1870s, was a complete flip to a new theory of value, which was called subjective theory of value, which is you only value things, you value specific units within a specific context for a specific purpose, and that comes from you, the valuer. So, if you've got, if you're in the desert, then one glass of water, so a specific unit of water, might be the most valuable thing in the world to you. If you're sitting in a room like this where there's gallons of water, this cup of water, even if I spill it, doesn't cost me anything because we can go get another glass of water. So it's not a high value because there's other water that we can get. So that was conceived as subjective value. So it comes from each person, each subject valuing it. But from the objectivist point of view, I would argue that kind of math that puts two things together. That puts a truly subjective theory, which is things have value just because you like them, just because they give you pleasure. And that's the theory of value that goes into the mainstream neoclassical economics. But there's also a theory of value where it's subject dependent. It depends on the subject, but it's a subject who's conceiving goals and making plans and has purposes. So both the mainstream neoclassical theories, they consider themselves subjective value theories of economics. The Austrians call themselves subjective value theories of economics. But what I argue is that no, they're actually implicitly objective value in Ayn Rand's sense. And that's what the big difference is between Austrian economics and mainstream. Now, part of the problem is because Austrians have called themselves subjective value, or they think that's what they're doing, they've conceptualized it that way, they start to move away from an implicitly objective value view towards a more actually subjective value view. So one of the things von Mises does with that is this idea of consumer sovereignty. So it's just the consumer's subjective values, that's what drives the economy. That's what gives value to everything.